Welcome to week 7. We are almost done with the course. Here is the Fireside Chat, and a couple things. Check out PBIS videos. Troll the web. Look for PBIS videos and encourage PBIS videos to be done in your school by staff and students. I mean, don't buy something canned where kids look and it's not their school and it's not kids that they recognize. If you're doing PBIS videos on, behavioral expectations and just civic expectations and even like disability awareness, so forth, have students and staff in the building do the PBIS videos. And there's some really cool stuff. Let students be creative, and it can be empowering. And have students with disabilities, ELLs, I mean, everybody, take a turn participating in that. So under Wisconsin Act 309, there were 2 parts on that. One was requiring a bullying policy and bullying reporting process. But the other part of Act 309 was an annual school safety report, which not all school boards do. Not all administrative teams give to school boards, I should say. But that is part of the law, and that's something that you would be involved in, such as, and actually there's not a lot of guidance given on it. You could talk about how many disciplinary referrals there were, or you could talk about, proactively the PBIS type videos you did. You can talk about OCR complaints. You can talk about motivating factors, any blend of those that you want to put in. You can talk about suspension data, but remember, I mean, my personal opinion is suspension data is garbage. So it's up to you if you want to put that in your paper or not. And suspension data is extremely, there's very little inter-rater reliability between administrator to administrator with suspension data. Meaning, if this situation happened, this administrator would address it this way, this administrator would address it this way. Those aren't going to be the same. So just figure out what you want to present, like the scope and sequence I have and how that was updated, and also looking, I think, at office referrals was something that I typically presented, but you want to make sure that you have, that you have something like that. Make sure that, again, you take the time to find the nuanced things within the district. When you walk around the schools, see if there's more there than the football trophies. I've talked about it before, and again, I think it's important as you think about your non-discriminatory practices, get together some students, and talk to students and have them tell you what they think about, the culture of their school, and just let them talk. Don't be leading, but let them talk and take some notes, write it down. So let's see. I talked about about the youth risk behavior survey. There's also schools that do climate surveys that they put together themselves, and they literally put these things together in 5 minutes on a Google survey. Like they'll either do it for staff or students. If it's staff, do you enjoy working here? Do you enjoy your job? Do you feel safe at work? Would you recommend this to another person to work here, or whatever it is? But it takes a lot to develop a survey. I mean, I know people who work specifically, and that's all they do. Like they'll develop a survey for Nabisco or something like that, and they'll spend half a year on it. And it might be, 10 questions, but to think that you can sit down in 5 minutes and develop a survey that then you can take the data and reflectively transfer that out and say, this is our school culture and whatever. That's naive. I mean, don't fall for that. So if you're going to do a survey, really, first of all, think of what your constructs are, or the headings, what you want to find out. So, for example, if a construct is physical environment safety, so maybe you have some questions, like do you feel like the school itself is safe. People are out in the hallways, during passing times. There's camera, locked doors, whatever. You might want to do another construct, which is reporting systems, like, I understand how to report threats, or I don't know how to report threats, or here's why. Would you report a threat, or why not? And then give some reasons. I don't want to have somebody find out and take it out on me, or nothing's going to be done, or whatever it is. I mean, once you start figuring out constructs and then answering those with survey questions, then then you're doing something which is more productive. But I always kind of cringe when schools do that or send out a survey. Well, the reality to kids, well, when you send a survey to kids, again, you have kids with intellectual disabilities, ELL, and they're not going to grasp what you're asking in that survey, most likely, unless you've incorporated them in a pilot group or something. So, I mean, it's one of these things where you take it and you post it as if you're representing your entire student body, when really you're not. You're representing your non-disabled population and your non-ELL population. So I really caution people on stuff like that. I think there's much more power in saying, I talk to a group, and you don't have to indicate who, but you can represent, say I talk to 5 high school kids, and whatever, 2 freshmen, sophomore, a junior, and a senior. And you can also do the same thing, with some staff. I think that gives you more data. That's more qualitative versus the quantitative stuff that you can yank out of a survey. But this, boards always want to hear that people love working for the district and that everything is going great. And you can manipulate almost any survey to have that outcome, no matter what the situation is. So just be careful that you don't fall into that trap, because it's easy to do that. So be careful on climate surveys. And again, the youth risk behavior survey, people will build entire action plans around that. And again, ask yourself the question of, okay, maybe 70% of our students really understood this, but our students with disabilities, probably a lot of them didn't. And also, is this really data that are these good questions? Is this relevant to us here? So just, again, be careful with that. I'm a big fan of mentor programs, and even students with disabilities mentoring other students with disabilities. I think that is, that's a terrific way to build leadership. And one of the things that I've done, and a lot of times it works, is a student, maybe with an emotional behavioral disability, you're talking your student that otherwise is there, 2 hours a day and abbreviated schedule. Give them a job to do during school. Maybe they're helping to sort some mail. I mean, it doesn't have to be something menial like, shredding paper, but I mean something that, and it's a task that you put some prestige with, or if they, but they have to have target behavior, otherwise they can't do it that day, but then, they come back the next day and then they can have an attempt to do it. Not like it's one thing, you don't want to set up a situation and work with staff where, okay, we put this whole plan together, but if you violate it once, like everything's gone. You don't want to do that, because then if a kid does it, they'll be like, oh, then why should I even try after this? So I think mentoring programs are terrific and give a chance for leadership. I remember, again, as a director, a 4th grade boy, and wow, this boy gave us a run for our money. Would leave the classroom, kind of run around, go into other classrooms and things like that, and it seemed no matter what we did, we just weren't getting progress. And we worked with the dad, and actually I had the dad come in and go through nonviolent crisis intervention training with us, with our team, because I wanted him to know exactly what we were doing with his child, as far as like the verbal de-escalation, the posturing, and then also the physical holds, to build that trust and relationship with that father. It was very important in this case, and the parent appreciated it. It's the only time a parent has put me in a hold also. So, but you know what? As a director, that was a really wise thing for me to do. Now, I'm not saying do that with all your parents, of course not. But this was a situation where, you know, there was a real trust question on the line, and I knew if we could get the parent, you know, with us and educate it to what we were doing, and you know, hopefully also validate that parent of saying, here's some things that you can use at home. Now, not necessarily the holds. We weren't certifying them. We didn't give them a certificate, but you know, some of the verbal approaches, some of the language that we use, posturing. But one thing we did with that boy, you know, we had met, and we gave him a role. You know, we knew he liked Phi-Ed, and he was pretty athletic. So the Phi-Ed teacher met with him and said, I need you to help me out. I need you to come down at this time, and then I have the kindergarten kids in here, and I really need a helper. You're good at this stuff. Would you help me out? And the kid totally was like, yeah. And he was the best helper. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, but you know, if he had to have earned that privilege, you know, every day, if there was a behavior or discipline referral, then you know, he wasn't able to be the helper for that day. He'd have to wait till the next time. But that significantly decreased the you know, discipline incidents that we had, and I think it comes down to something called agency and purpose. So if you look that up, agency and purpose, kids knowing, first of all, who they are, understanding who they are, and that they have a purpose in life. And it might seem simplistic, but you know, 100 years ago, it was, you went home, a lot of kids, and you worked on the farm, and you know, that was your purpose. And you know, it was pretty faith and whatever, you know, agency and purpose really weren't that hard to define, where today it's not like that. A lot of kids don't have, they're not even connected to nature. I mean, if you did a survey and asked kids, when's the last time you've been out and did a walk in a woods or a park or something like that, you'd be astounded. So I think there's things like that that you need to also be very aware of, is doing activities and working with staff on agency and purpose, especially with your counselors. But look that up, do a little research on that. It's something in the last year, actually, I've put much more value into working on agency and purpose. One couple of things. Something you want to consider, or I would suggest you consider, are ambassador programs, rotating ambassador programs, meaning you might have at any grade level, but you have, you know, at high school you kind of have like the Key Club, but you have student ambassadors, and this can work really well at an elementary level, or maybe for third grade, let's say students are given the role of, okay, you're an ambassador for, you know, this month, you and another person. So if anyone new moves in, you're responsible to teach them how to navigate the school, you know, help them to meet people as an ambassador. Two, you know, one of your jobs is going to be to, you know, ask people how their day is, or to greet people in the morning and things like this, but to make it really a privileged position. And I think, again, you put kids that never have been in that role into that role, and they rise to the challenge of that, and they rise, I guess, you know, to the rigor. When we talk about rigor, so many times, you know, once a student is diagnosed with a disability, or you get something, you know, a medical whatever from the outside, or a student has had a blow up, teachers will back off and they'll reduce the rigor because they don't want to go through that again. you've got to keep championing that students deserve academic rigor. All students deserve that to, whatever means they have, finding a baseline. And then you need to celebrate and acknowledge and work with your administrators growth from baseline as well as attainment. What's been done for years is people will recognize attainment. So if you went from 10% to 80%, but attainment was 90%, you failed, although you increased 70%. So you need to look at growth and attainment and celebrate both. But there's been just this emphasis on attainment, and we see that in the school report card that comes out from the state. Now, there's some changes to that as far as performance indicators that I mentioned in my OCR interview from December, which I think will be relevant. But and one thing too is I got together a number of teachers, and we looked really at what we were doing for inclusion in the district. So got together elementary teachers and then middle school. But here's what we did: we first ballparked. So maybe got together elementary, like 10 teachers. We ballparked what we thought for a student with a disability, how much of the day they were included, like what percentage. And typically we always, that was overestimated. Like they're included, and we'd kind of define what that would mean. Not necessarily mainstream, but included. And then you would go and you'd look at performance indicator data from the DPI 3 and 5, and that would tell you how much of a student's day was in the IP for special education, and how much regular ed and whatever. But you would find that a lot of students are not included nearly as much as what you think. So that's a good data point to look at, is indicators 3 and 5, and just getting a baseline of saying how many minutes a day are on average are students with disabilities included, and then decide if you want to target that and increase that. So we're going to increase from baseline. Maybe you don't even have a goal. You just say we're going to, like a target, we're going to increase from baseline, and then come back, come up with a plan for how you're going to do that, and then how you're going to measure it, and then check it out. But that's a pretty cool activity to do. So search your school online too. If you're a special ed director, pupil services, find out what is being written about your school, how your school's portrayed in the community. I think that's important. And then if there isn't much out there, look at what you can contribute to that. For example, if you have celebrating, for example, diversity, or celebrating the giving that students do, or if there's a mentoring program or things like this. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can highlight. When I ran a nurse allergy summit. We hosted it as a district, and we had maybe 10 other districts there. And our at-risk students took on a project where they developed a 2-minute video about hand washing and allergy education, and it was targeted for elementary kids. And it was an awesome video. And we used this in all of the schools, and we showed it, and we gave copies out of it back at that time on a CD. But yet, so we had our at-risk kids who felt like they were contributing, they were a part of something that was very important in our school. And at the same time, we're creating a situation, through hand washing and whatever, we're decreasing the likelihood of contamination, cross-contamination. So, indirectly, pupil services, non-discrim, working that we are not discriminating against students with allergies, that we're promoting an environment that's safe and welcoming for those students. And we're also not discriminating against at-risk students. We're saying you're at risk. You can't be doing this stuff. I mean, we've got to trust this to other students. I mean, so just that's kind of a neat piece to for me to toss out there, because that really worked out well. All right, we are complete for lecture. I call it a lecture. Come on, not a lecture. Fireside Chat, number 7. And then I do these again. Try to give some context to what we cover in the week. Take care.